right, Annalyn, thank you for joining me on Transcend the podcast. How you doing today?
I'm good. How are you doing, Asha?
I am doing pretty well, living the life, working remotely, fighting with the internet, trying to pretend like I'm still in the US. All good things. So those of you listening who have these online remote businesses where you have to show up on Zoom, let me know what country you're in, because apparently that's the one I need to be in if it's working for you.
Global nomad lifestyle,
Totally trying to get it. That's the dream. That's the dream I'm trying to live. So, Annalyn, thank you so much for being on the podcast. You are a part of the TRANSCEND community, and that's how we met. But I am so fascinated by your entrepreneurship journey and your leap, and I want the world to know. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what work you do and how you got started?
Yeah. Well, thanks again for inviting me to be on the podcast. Super exciting to be a part of it. And of course, to be a part of Transcend as well. So the type of work that I do, I'm a leadership and career coach. I'm a group facilitator and a professional speaker. And so I have my own business, my own LLC that I opened up.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, July 27th, I want to say, of 2021. So,
Awesome.
I'm still a newbie at this game. And at the same time, I feel like, oh man, it's been a journey so far and it's been good. And yeah, thank you for all the support and help you've given me over the past few months, and it's like yeah. So what I focus in on is really helping to empower women and BIPOC leaders with their careers and the lives that they truly crave. And that really centers me and my work. And it feels so good to be able to just kind of have that be my North Star when I'm thinking about like the types of programs I want to create, the clients I want to attract to my coaching practice, and to just be focused in my work. It's just been really, really awesome. And to know that I'm like creating that myself, right? Along with, of course, support from what I call my hype crew of just,
yes.
And you're a part of that too, of just,
yes.
people in my community, other women entrepreneurs, especially just other folks who have been there before. And that's been a big part of why I think I've been successful so far is that community, and being able to just learn as I go. And it's been a good ride so far, but there's still so much to learn, knowing I haven't even been in this game for like 6 months,
Well, that's life, right? There's always so much to learn. I think one of the biggest myths that, or maybe, I don't know if it was a myth that was told to me or just something I thought as a kid, is that, when I got to be an adult, everything would just make sense and it'd be easy. And, no kid wants to be a kid any longer than they have to be. And then you get to adulthood and you're like, I'm still learning this stuff. So that learning is definitely a lifelong journey. So were you coaching before you started your own business, or is the coaching part new for your business?
I was coaching before at my last company. So I used to work for Electronic Arts, or EA for short, the gaming company based out of, the Bay Area in Redwood City. And I was very fortunate, right? Like to have been able to have coached some of the leaders at the company. And then I also had started my coaching certification years back, actually the coaching courses I was doing at UC Berkeley. So my career trajectory was, I started out in higher education. So I was thinking about this morning, that a common thread I think throughout my career is like, how do I coach, whether it's students in higher ed or on college campuses, staff or in faculty who work there, and then, further along in my career at EA, it was like, how do I coach these people leaders, these people managers, or just, employees for the company who are just trying to get to a space where they could grow in their leadership style, right? And grow in that journey of theirs. So I have been doing it for the past few years, but this is really the time that when I opened up my business, I'm like, okay, I'm going to have my own private clients, start really charging for it because it was a part of my role before, right? So no one had to necessarily pay out of pocket for it. So yeah, that's the part that's new, is generating my own, pipeline.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, how did you know that it was time for you to leave corporate and to strike out on your own?
Yeah. Um, so I had an inkling probably, or a curiosity that peaked probably around 3 years ago. So I was about 2.5 years into my old role. And I just started thinking, like, what would it be like to actually break out on my own and have my own business if I was doing this similar work, because I loved being in learning development. I loved, being able to create content and facilitate experiences for folks. And but I was just like, what if what if I was able to do this with my own spin on it, right? And to be able to just do what I want to do with no restrictions, or not having to be a certain brand or way. And you know it wasn't until the pandemic, honestly, that this dream of mine kept like knocking me over the head over and over, of just like, it what I call like my inner wisdom, or like the whispers, became really loud after a while. And I just felt like something was missing, like, even though the work I was doing, it wasn't bad. And I loved my team and I loved my boss. And, EA is a fun company to work for. I was just like, something, I don't feel as fulfilled as I should be feeling, So when I was going through my certification process for coaching, I started observing like every coaching session I had with my coach and every therapy session I had. And a lot of the conversations I was having with my friends was about like, well, what would it be like for me to leave? And I was just so scared to do it. So anyway, long story short, I think this past May, I was driving back up from LA after seeing my family and had, 6 hours in the car to really sit down and think about it. A good thinking time. And I was like, I need to do this. I need to take this leap of faith. I need to make this jump. I've been wanting this for years now. And even though I had still so many fears about going off on my own, like, I just knew I had to do it. And the other, pivotal point I would say is that when I came back to work, my manager had sent out, team goals for the next year. And I was working on stuff that I really wanted to do. And I requested to do this work. And yet it wasn't exciting me as much as I wanted it to. And that to me was a huge sign to be like, okay, you have what you asked for and it's still not enough. You need to make some moves. So that's what happened.
Got it. I like that story because I think it gives some context to the time. Sometimes we feel like we've got to make a move and strike out on our own, or people feel like they have to make a move and strike it on their own right away. And you don't have to do anything right away. You can take time and figure out the right opportunity. But there is a difference between waiting for the perfect time and then realizing that the time is now. So people can wait and wait and wait and let that fear hold them back. But you didn't do that. You waited until you felt like, okay, I got to do this. And even in the midst of some fear and uncertainty, step forward anyway. And so kudos to you for taking that leap of faith for sure. So I'm curious now, looking at the folks who you coach, so women of color, BIPOC women, what are are there recurring themes or issues that you tend to see within the people that you coach that you are helping them work through?
Yeah, I would say there are a few different themes that come up. And I coach both BIPOC and white women as well, right? And I would say that from a two things. So from a gender lens, there is the challenge of finding one's voice and feeling confident in sharing their perspectives or showing up in a different way when they're perhaps the only woman in the room or they're the only person of color in the room. And being able to just figure out what's my own leadership style, particularly if someone is BIPOC, right? And we have a lot of like cultural nuances that and experiences that we bring. Where just yesterday, for example, a woman leader, a Black woman leader that I was working with said to me, I don't feel like I could be my authentic self, right? Like I've been told not to. So,
Right.
I think, for instances like that, or, I had another woman who's Asian Pacific Islander who said, the reason why I want you as my coach, not only because I know you know how to coach me, but you have lived experience that when I had a coach who wasn't from my background, I had to explain to her what it meant like to walk in my shoes and what I was born into, And so I think that the commonalities there around being other, and being in these, dominant spaces where folks often have to find out, like, yeah, who am I as a leader? What is it that I want for my career? And how do I advocate for myself when this system wasn't necessarily built for me to succeed in the same way?
I was just thinking what came to mind is that I say all the time on this podcast and just in life in general, bring your full authentic self to the table, right? And whether you are doing that as an entrepreneur or as an employee, like if you held back, Annalyn, in who you were, your essence, and you are Filipino, right? And so you have Filipino heritage and bring that culture with you, the clients that you were looking to coach would miss out on that if you didn't bring your full culture and heritage and these things that we have been taught are our differences and may make us the other. That's what makes you so great at what you do, because you can do this from your own lived experience. And it sounds like you're also encouraging the clients that you coach to also bring that full lived experience with them as well.
For sure, for sure. And, and it does start with us, one, obviously having a safe space to do that, but two, being courageous enough when we do have opportunities to do that, to be like, yeah, here is my story. I have battled internalized racism, for example, right? Like that is why I have not, like, earlier in my career where it was hard for me to find my voice because I grew up in a family that said, like, don't rock the boat, don't argue with your boss. Like my dad would tell me that, right? And so while I have an awareness of that and know that I don't have to adhere to those rules or generalizations, like there's been a part of me that has internalized some of that. So how do I even like push back on that to know, like, well, are these messages still serving me right at this point in my career? No, they're not. So yeah, so I'm just, I feel very privileged to be a coach, to be someone who could help another person in their journey in finding their voice, in finding the leadership style that works for them, in advocating for themselves and what they want, not just within their careers. Because I'm also a holistic coach where I'm like, whatever happens at work, there's other stuff in your life that's affecting, right? Like how you show up. So to me, it's like, how do we look at this holistic way in which you are living, and what's a dream that you're trying to go after right now, and I'm going to help you get there, right? I'm going to be your champion through all of that.
I love it. Come coach
Yeah.
me.
Sign me up. Yes.
Yes, no, I absolutely love it. I mean, those same things. So you're focusing primarily on folks who are still in that corporate world, but a lot of those themes still come up in entrepreneurship, right? Where we're finding our
For
voices,
sure.
battling those things that we'd heard, like don't rock the boat, or, on my side of the family, I heard, you got to be twice as good as the next
Mm,
person. I
yep.
was saying yesterday, I don't remember if I was recording the podcast or not, but just like the thing about hair, I think I was recording a podcast yesterday talking about hair. When I was in law school and I had my hair straight or as straight as it could be for my interview. And then I got the job and I was tired of doing my hair. So I got braids. And I remember my mom being really concerned that I wasn't going to be able to keep this job because of the way that my hair looked. And now, in 2021, that probably sounds a little bit crazy, but that wasn't her experience. She had known people who had lost their jobs or not been hired. Now in California, we have the Crown Act to protect discrimination from hair. But the point is that those pieces of advice, like don't rock the boat or keep your hair straight, conform, essentially, no longer serve us as entrepreneurs. So how do you support people in breaking out of those limiting fears that have probably come from a good place to keep us safe, but now no longer serve us as after people, entrepreneur or not, who were trying to go out and build our dreams?
Yeah. Well, I think the first thing is even acknowledging that it's there, right? To know like what were the messages that I was surrounded by, regardless if it was one of our parents, folks we grew up with, what were those messages that we heard early on, and thinking about the origin of it. And then it's like, well, why were they showing up? Was this person telling me this? Right. And to your point, maybe it was to keep us safe. And, we all have our own like gremlin saboteurs, our inner critics that come up, right? And will tell us, like, no, don't do that or stick to this way. And, I'm kind of thinking about this chart that I ended up designing for this keynote that I did recently, which was, okay, so how do you flip the script on that, right? Like, are those messages still serving you? How are you feeling about it? Like, how is that affecting your well-being, your mental health, your emotional health? And if you realize it's not serving you in a positive way, well, what's another way to look at it then, right? And it's like, what's a different perspective in how you could see what's happening to you right now? And and I would say to your answer your question directly, it's being able to walk someone through that process and then allow them to see, okay, well, what else is here, right? Like, how do you want to approach your life now? Because you do have the power and you do have the agency to flip the script on it. Like, you don't have to continue to maintain the status quo or to maintain the way life has been so far. Like, we do have power, we do have agency in that. So I think it's allowing people the reflection time to think about, where are these messages coming from, and are these fears still serving me? And then, okay, well, here's what I'm going to do about it then. Like, here's a path I'm going to take for myself that feels more empowering and full and creative, instead of it holding someone back.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that is work that is always done as an entrepreneur, maybe
Yep.
just in life in general, but certainly as an entrepreneur. All right. So, since you have transitioned from the corporate world into entrepreneurship, what are some of the mindset shifts you have had to make in order to find the success that you have found to date?
Yeah. So one of the biggest shifts that I made recently was really understanding that you can't do it all, or you can, but you're going to be wasting a lot of your time spending spending time and energy on things that other people have an expertise in. And I want to say, one of your podcast episodes, and we've talked about this within the Transcend community, is hire a virtual assistant. So I went ahead and did that last week, and it has already been a heaven sent service as it is. And I met my VA today. So, one thing I want to say about that is like coming from an immigrant family and being a person who I realize is like a good or excellent student, right? Like I prided myself on being really determined and doing all this stuff myself. And I'm like, it drained me. I had 2 weeks ago, I had such a bad week because I was trying to take it all on. And I was like, okay, I need to shift my mindset in, even though right now I'm a solo LLC, CEO, I'm still a CEO. And people like my business coach was like, you are now the CEO. Do you think other CEOs do everything within their companies? They
Right?
they hire people who are excellent at it, those tasks or those projects so that it can free up your time. And I just kept hearing that message over and over again, whether it was from you or her or other folks who have been in the game for longer than I have. And I'm like, I need to invest in my business and in myself in order to keep the passion growing. Right. And in order for me to not burn out, because I was just feeling really unhappy about that. Um, so that's one thing. And then the other thing I would say, which has been actually like a really beautiful experience since going into entrepreneurship, I've been reconnecting with people from my past who, you know, whether I used to work with them or they were like an old student of mine at a university I used to work at. And we're just like connecting on different levels of like, what are you up to now? And there people are curious, like, what made you take the leap? And honestly, I think sometimes it gives people like the courage and also just like the curiosity to be like, maybe I could do that too. Like I've had this dream around opening my own business, or I've had this dream to quit my job and go into a different industry. So that's been really cool too, in terms of like, let me reconnect with people from my past and past, folks who have been within my circle who I just lost touch with, especially during the pandemic, right? And and it feels really good to just reconnect with other human beings, especially having been isolated during the pandemic. Like I it makes me just like realize how much community and connection is so important to like my values and how I live my life. And that's been a really beautiful process.
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely love that. So thinking about the first thing you talked about in terms of, not taking everything on yourself, right? There is, I feel like, especially in communities of color, one, because of lack of resources, but two, we have mostly worked so hard to make our parents proud. And also that was instilled because that was what we learned to do. You have to hustle, you got to work really hard, because that old model of work hard and success will come was what most of us grew up with, right? So now we're working on working smarter, not harder, right? If you work hard, fine, but at least, make sure that it gives you the return you want. And there's nothing wrong with hiring the experts to do the things that they are expert at. That's why they are the experts. And then the power of relationships and community building. I think that is so, so important. So can you talk a little bit about how the power of Transcend and the being in the community of Transcend has helped you in your business?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, first of all, just the resources that you have within the program, I that's the reason why I signed up for your program, was to do the online, how to even build an LLC, or what is that process like? Because I tried doing it on my own and I got Googled out. I was like, oh my God, I cannot deal with this. So, and I've heard other people say the same things to me of like, it's such a daunting process for many of us. So that's one thing, are the resources. The other thing is recognizing that I'm not going through this alone. So that community aspect of when we get together on Thursdays at noon is being able to hear what other people may be challenged by or struggling with, and to be like, yeah, me too. Plus one on that comment. So it's like, even though we may all have different businesses and folks that we're serving, there are some commonalities that that happen, especially when you are a BIPOC business owner, right? Like there are just things that we have in common. And so that's been really great. And like, Ariana, who was on the podcast recently, like she helped me like look at my website and just like give her opinion on my front page, right? Like that was really generous of her to do. And it's like now my network has expanded even more. So what I was saying before of like reconnecting with folks from my past, my network has now grown exponentially since July. It's like people are hearing things that I'm like the keynote that I did, or now like I'm working with a different company on a leadership development series for women that I wouldn't have met these women if I was still at my same company, right? So that's been really awesome too, is to just expand my community as well. And that's just always been important to me ever since I was like in college. And it's been, again, such a blessing and such a gift to have that right now during this time when we've been so disconnected during the
Yeah.
pandemic.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
awesome. So, what is the win that you are most proud of in your business so far?
I have like a meta one, and then I have like a specific one.
Okay.
So the meta one, like the 10,000-foot view, I would say is just the fact that I took the leap of faith and like am doing this thing, like the fact that I pushed through the fears and pushed through what I thought was going to be disappointing to my parents has not been, like I was so worried at first of like, oh my God, like no one in my family is an entrepreneur, like I didn't learn that stuff. Neither of my parents were entrepreneurs. They had very steady jobs, their entire careers. So breaking out of that, knowing that I was like, the person who was going to take that leap of faith, also being a single solo person. I'm not in a partnership right now. And that was like a big deal for me too, to be like, I'm truly doing this on my own. And I have that much faith in myself that I'm going to do it and I'm going to be successful at it. So that to me is just a huge win. And then the other thing I would say is, I have built this leadership development program called, I got to get the title right because it's so long. So lead with empowering presence and confidence. And it's really a program that I have built for women leaders who are, just trying to even like amplify their voices and to feel fully confident in the spaces and where they're at, and to recognize like what happens when I feel choked up or when I have anxiety around some of these things that we go through in our day-to-day jobs, and how do I up level my skills so that I can go after the types of roles and the types of career that I want to build for myself. And I have designed and developed that from scratch, and am now, able to facilitate this for other women leaders. And it's just been a really positive experience. Yeah. And I'm really proud of it. And it was the first thing that I basically did within my first month of having the business, of pitching it, having the slide deck ready, like putting my price out there. And thank you so much for consulting with me on that, right? Of like, yeah, what is the value that the participants are going to get, right? And just being able to have that confidence to do the pitch and then to get the contract. So that was huge for me, and to have a big win like that out the gate just gave me more confidence that I could keep doing this. Like I did this in my first month, So like even bigger and better things are possible, and it's going to happen. So I would say
Absolutely.
that that's a really big win.
Yeah, that's awesome. And congratulations and kudos to you for all of that. Those are some amazing wins. I want to just go back to the pricing thing quick, because I want to use it as an example that of like how to move through the fear when we get uncomfortable. Because you know, when you're first starting out, or sometimes even when you've been out there for a while, but you can be sort of isolated in your business, and you may not know what the going rates are for different projects or activities or items that you're creating, and or services that you're rendering, and there may not be something you can just go and look up. But the other part of that is often I find that women and also people of color, we tend to undervalue and underprice our services, right? Because there is, I don't know, I think of like, I have never really been to a fancy Mexican food restaurant outside of Mexico, because the idea is that Mexican food is supposed to be cheap and affordable and like street tacos, right? But that's not it. And so anyone who wants to break out of that mold, let's say, has to really have some confidence and some belief behind them. Same thing that happens with the pricing. Oh my gosh, I'm going to form this business for somebody. Is someone actually going to pay me what it's worth? Or because it's me, should I be charging somewhat less? So we actually did a little bit of work around the pricing. Can you give us just a little bit of background without too many details,
Right.
with whatever you feel
Right.
comfortable with about that, and then talk about how we moved
Sure.
through it?
Yeah. Well, to even take it further back, I remember talking to one of my best friends about the experience, and I was like, I don't know, I think I'm going to charge like $3,000 for this. And she's like, girl, are you crazy? She was like, that is not enough, and I was like, really? And so I started thinking about like, yeah, what it would it take to develop this? What is the time, the energy? And going back to when I talked to you, I think what was really valuable about that conversation was you saying, "Hang on, though. Like, yes, there's the time that it'll take to develop this, all that good stuff, and what's the value and what's the impact you're going to make on each person that will be in experiencing this, right?" And and then we broke it down into, okay, so if this is like X is the final number, think about like, well, what's the true investment that the company would be making per individual? And I think that also opened my eyes, because I started thinking about like, yeah, if someone was to attend a professional conference, for example, sometimes that costs $1,000, 2,000, 3, 5, and beyond, depending if they're traveling somewhere, right? And I'm like, and this is a way in which they're going to build community at their company. They're going to get one-on-one coaching with me, right? So I started to really um reflect on what you told me around the value. And so that's what got me to the price that I did. And you know what's funny? Like 5 minutes before the meeting, I was like, okay, this is my number. And then like right before, I'm like, I'm gonna increase it by 5K, right? And I'm just gonna see what they say. And they accepted it. They were like, okay, cool, and we went through the whole process of contracting and whatnot. But I worked myself up so much around they're gonna say no, or they're gonna try to talk me down, and they didn't. And like a similar thing happened recently with a coaching client that, just yesterday she was like, okay, that's the price, cool. And in my mind, I was working myself up like, maybe this is too much, maybe she's gonna try and talk me down, like. And I think it's often that fear of, is someone going to come back to me and say like, no, that's not worth it? Not even that I can't afford it. It's more like, no, what you're charging me is not going to be worth the price. And I think part of the work that I've had to do, and if I could offer that to any of the listeners, is, just stand in your own like inner wisdom, and knowing that like there is plenty of value of what this person is going to get out of any, service, product, whatever we end up offering to people. And to just know, and if it doesn't work out with this person or this company, someone else will say yes. And to again stand firmly in that. But it's a process, and it's not easy. I don't. It's part of the work of just going through that, and the nerves and the anxiety. But
Yeah, and
if I
oftentimes
could
I
add,
find that it's. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, if I could add one other thing, because this has been a big aha for me, is talking to other entrepreneurs who are doing the same work and like uncovering the veil, right? Like just opening up the curtains of like, how much do you charge for XYZ? Because we're often taught to not talk about that stuff, and yes. And it's like, no, the more that we know, the more we could support each other and recognize that, like, yeah, you are undercharging. Or like someone will tell me the same thing, like, no, you need to increase that. Or, well, like, here's the market rate. And it's like, I think we're often taught to keep numbers so hush hush that
Yeah.
it
Yep.
hurts us as
It
business owners
does.
when we do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, everything that you just said, just again, I think speaks to the power of being in the right community with the right people. So, so you have those people around you who can encourage you to charge more. And I think also getting out of our own way when it comes to pricing and offering the services. If you can take a bird's eye view and really think about the value that you're providing someone, like we had talked about, it takes you sort of out of the equation. So if you were thinking, oh, I can't charge this much. Oh, I don't have enough education. Oh, I need another degree. Forget that, right? Thinking, what is the value that is being conveyed to this person who is taking this course or doing my coaching or who is buying my product? And then you can price the value. And in that specific situation that you had talked about, had something to do with employee retention. I'm like, it costs companies about
Yes.
$100,000 when they lose employees.
Yes.
So whatever the
That's
price
right.
is for the workshop that's going to help with employee
Yes.
retention that's short of $100,000 is a great price.
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. I forgot to mention that. Yes. I want to double down on what you just said, because that was huge to add a slide with legit stats that are out there of saying, here's the cost of when someone leaves the company. Here's the cost of what it takes to onboard someone if you have to hire a new employee, right? Like, here are the thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, if not millions, that companies spend every year when they lose good people, right? And I think that was actually a huge selling point in terms of the company's investment per person when they think about, again, like for the larger cost. If any of those women were to leave the company, would cost more than what I charge for the entire program.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, again, right, it's kind of, there's the mindset piece that needs to be done to be able to charge what people say what we are worth. But then there's also the real logistical piece of it of there is actually some value that you can compute and fall back on to help support you through this, limiting belief of, I don't know if anyone's going to pay that, or I don't know if my service is worth it. When you do the numbers and you calculate the value, please, you got that. So good. I
Right,
was
right.
really glad that
Yeah.
that you were comfortable enough and felt safe enough to actually bring that to the community, and then we could actually talk about it, because
Yeah,
the community also rallied around you as well to support you through
totally.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, and
So
it was really cool to be able to come back and tell you all, a couple weeks
yes.
later, like, yeah, they signed the contract, it's a yes, and everyone's like, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So yeah,
absolutely. So I've
that
got
was
two more
awesome.
questions for you. What is one surprising thing about entrepreneurship? Maybe something you didn't expect, and then we'll follow that up with what is something in a positive way that you didn't expect, or what has been a benefit that just has made it, all worth it to date. Because there are always ups and downs. I feel like it's like having a business is like having a kid. It's
Mm-hmm.
unpredictable, but you love the thing anyway. So there are things you weren't prepared for, and then things that were pleasantly surprising. So, what are a couple of those things for you?
Yeah. Yeah. So I would say some of the biggest challenges has been the learning curve, right? Like, I don't know what I don't know. And you could do all the Googling you want and all the research you want online, but you truly don't know until you step into it, as with many things in life, right? Um, so I think that's been the biggest challenge of like oh my God, I have all these ideas for my business. And oh my God, this coach is doing some amazing work. Like, look at what she's doing on Instagram. So the challenge has been, and I'm a big ideas person, right? Like, I have ideas going on in my head all day, all night. So it's like learning to focus in on, okay, so I just built this leadership development program. Let me continue that thread and get that out there first before I start thinking about my memoir, you know?
Right.
As much as I want to do that, right? It's, as much as I want to do my memoir, it's like, okay, what's already here? So I think
Right.
the challenge has been like, man, what am I focusing in on today? Right. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and just yesterday in my other business coaching group I'm a part of, it's like, what are my big rocks for today, for this week?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And
Mm-hmm.
getting that real, laser focus on goals for myself per week, per month, per
Right.
quarter. So that has been, I would say, a challenge, but also a good muscle for me to do
Mm-hmm.
because it's on me, right? Like I
Right.
have to figure out what those things are versus when I was with the company, it's like, no, these are the team goals. Here's your priorities.
Right.
Go, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, some of the positive things I will tell you, and hopefully this won't change. And I know I'm still new at this, but it's like I have had time to breathe in between what I'm doing and to be really intentional about who it is that I'm serving, the type of work I'm taking on. Um, you know, again, like being able to meditate before I do a group facilitation. I never used to do that before. Like I would just go, it was like go, 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 go. And now I have built in intentional times for me to reflect, to journal, to think about, wow, like all these connections of what I've been experiencing. And, whether you want to label it as God, the universe, like spirit, whatever, it's like there's a plan for me. And I know that I'm living my purpose now. And that feels freaking good to just know that I'm in alignment with that. And, um, and I felt like I was somewhat out of alignment in my last role or what I had been doing even years back, right? There the intention wasn't there. And so that's what I think is the beautiful thing that happens with entrepreneurship is where you get to focus in on your dream and your purpose and what you want out of this life. And we only have one life in this body at least, and it's like I'm going to make the most out of it, right? And I'm going to forge the path that I want for myself. And, so far it hasn't steered me wrong in the past few months. Like I just feel honestly like more alive than I have felt in many years. And I think it's because I'm finding new ways of like being and doing and like showing up in the world differently. And people have commented like, wow, you have such like great energy or, just like things that I wasn't hearing before. And I'm like, wow, is this what it means? Like when you are in alignment and when you're doing what you're meant to be doing in this world? So
Mm-hmm.
I think the answer is
Yeah.
yes.
I think the answer is yes, too. That's absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I just have to reiterate again, I am so happy that we connected and so proud to support you on your journey, but also just to witness
Thank
your journey.
you.
You've been such a light and an inspiration. And every time I see you log in on Thursdays or when we meet up down in Rosenblum and Jack London Square for our
That's
little business
right.
meetups, like I am delighted by your presence and your company and your
Thank
shine. So
you.
thank you so much. If people want
Thank
to reach
you.
out to you, maybe get interested in coaching, how can they do that? How can they find you?
Yeah, two ways. So you could find me on my website. So AnnalynCruz.com, ANNALYNCRUZ.com, or groundedinwisdom.co. Either way will take you to the same site. And then folks can
Awesome.
find me on LinkedIn as well. So they could feel free to add me on there.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Annalyn. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, Asha. Thank you so much.
Of
Thanks
course.
so much. Yeah. Bye.